Did Samuel L. Jackson get an Oscar? No.
You go on talk shows, Academy Award nominee. Who cares? What year was it? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what year it was. I didn't win. I remember because I think I should have won.
Tell me someone like Samuel Jackson who doesn't have an Oscar, I would melt down my Oscar and give it to him.
You are sort of famous as one of those people who didn't bother with the fake smiley clappy bit. You didn't do that, did you?
That's true.
Martin Landau and Ed Wood.
Samuel L. Jackson is and always has been my favorite actor. Now, when I first made this decision, I was very small and made it for precisely 2 reasons. His name is Samuel, and my name is Samuel, and my favorite color was purple, and his lightsaber is purple. That was all I needed. Heck, I even dressed up as him to go see the opening of Revenge of the Sith, seen here in my favorite and the stupidest picture I have of myself. For my birthday one year, one of my uncles even got me a pre-recorded message from the man himself as part of a promotion he was doing for Snakes on a Plane. Now, obviously since I've gotten a little older, I've realized how many of his great and iconic performances that I didn't know about because, let's face it, a lot of his best performances aren't exactly kid-friendly. But as I've watched so many of his long list of movies, I've come to a question. How does this person, who is the highest grossing actor of all time, who has some of the most memorable and quoted movie lines ever, not have filmmaking's most coveted award? How does Samuel L. Jackson not have an Oscar? Now, the most obvious answer is that Samuel L. Jackson doesn't make a lot of the type of movies that are typically nominated for Academy Awards. And yeah, that's totally a fair point. He didn't become the highest grossing movie actor of all time by only making indie movies. When you think of Samuel L. Jackson, you typically think of blockbusters. He has been a part of the 3 highest grossing movie franchises ever. That being said, he's a lot more screen time as Nick Fury than Ray Arnold in Jurassic Park ever did. But still, to say that Samuel L. Jackson, however, has only made blockbusters is to underestimate just how many movies this man has made. He's been in 3 movies so far just this year. So today I'd like to look at the films he's made and the ones that I believe had a best chance to win an Oscar, and likely why he didn't win them. To start off, I want to talk about 2 different men and their close working relationship with Samuel L. Jackson, Spike Lee and Quentin Tarantino. Between the 2 of them, Samuel L. Jackson has appeared in 12 of their movies in some capacity. And these 2 different directors make up a good deal of the films that Samuel L. Jackson had a real chance to get an Oscar. Not necessarily all of them, but I thought it'd be good to highlight their work together, starting chronologically with Spike Lee. Spike Lee and Samuel L. Jackson are really good friends, and they have been for a long time. They appear in commercials together every year for March Madness. Jackson was there when Spike was awarded an honorary Oscar in 2015 and got to be the one to give him the real deal for his win in 2018 for BlacKkKlansman. The 2 met in the 80s while Jackson was performing theater in New York City. Shortly after this, Lee began putting Samuel L. Jackson in his movies.
Spike had this unique casting thing he would do. He would call, Sam! Spike, do the right thing! June! Click.
Jackson is in 4 back-to-back Spike Lee movies, with relatively small but memorable roles in School Days, Do the Right Thing, and Mo Better Blues, with his limited role as the radio DJ in Do the Right Thing being very memorable despite the character's very limited screen time. Heck, he even opens the movie.
Wake up! Wake up, wake up, wake up! Up you wake, up you wake, up you wake, up you wake! This is Mr. Senior Love Daddy, your voice of choice.
He capped off this run with Spike Lee with what I believe is his first real chance to get an Oscar, his role as Gator in Jungle Fever.
I like getting high. Why you think I got a room here to Taj Mahal? I'm a junkie. Crackhead. Look, but just tell mama how old his son is a crackhead. Fine.
In Jungle Fever, Jackson plays the drug-addicted older brother of the main character, played by Wesley Snipes. Jackson brought a lot of experience to the role, he himself being addicted to drugs for the better part of the decade. In fact, Jackson was finishing the process of going through rehab when he got the call to be in the movie. Many around him, including his wife and therapist, weren't sure the role was a good idea for him, as they feared being around so much drug paraphernalia wasn't healthy for him. Against their advice, Jackson went on to do the movie, and as a result garnered much critical praise for his all too realistic portrayal of an addict.
I ain't going nowhere till you you give me some money? I don't have any money.
He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor by the Kansas City Film Critics, Chicago Film Critics, and won the award from the New York City Film Critics, as well as the Cannes Film Festival. The Cannes win is especially of note as the legendary French Film Festival does not give out the award every year, and in fact had retired the category after 1981, but brought it back in special recognition of Jackson's performance. So why didn't Jackson get the nod from the Academy? Well, it's hard to know, but the biggest reason is probably just that Jackson was a relatively unknown actor to the film world. And while I do really like the performance that ended up winning, Jack Palance in City Slickers, the notion that Samuel L. Jackson couldn't at least get a nomination is kind of ridiculous. It's definitely worth noting that while Spike Lee has always been known as an innovative filmmaker with an important point of view, his work has not always been very well received by the Academy, which really shouldn't come as much of a surprise as Spike Lee's movies tend to shine a spotlight on issues of racial relations in the country, something the Oscars have never had a problem with. In fact, Lee's magnum opus Do the Right Thing was famously snubbed in most categories, only receiving 2 nominations, both of which it lost. In fact, of all Spike Lee's movies, there have been a total of 11 Oscar nominations and only 1 win. That win is right here, in 2018, for Adapted Screenplay, decades after Samuel L. Jackson gave one of the best performances of his career. After winning praise for his performance in Jungle Fever, Samuel L. Jackson began to get a lot more acting jobs. These included roles in Patriot Games, Jurassic Park, and True Romance, a film written by Quentin Tarantino. After meeting with Tarantino, fresh off the success of his debut film Reservoir Dogs, he told Jackson that he had a part for him in his next project, Pulp Fiction. This role as Jules kicked off a long relationship with Tarantino, appearing in 6 of his 10 feature films. The role of Jules is arguably Jackson's most iconic and rocketed him into superstardom, as well as netting him numerous awards and his lone Oscar nomination of his career.
And you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
Okay, cool. So Samuel L. Jackson gave probably the best performance of his career in one of the most quoted and memorable roles in one of the best films ever. So why didn't he win? Well, a few reasons. To start off, it was unclear who would be in what category between him and John Travolta.
Is there a better supporting film performance than Samuel L. Jackson in Pulp Fiction in the last 30 years? I find that genuinely hard to believe. And what makes you think it was supporting him? There's an argument to be made that that was a lead acting role.
If they both went in the lead category, it was thought that neither of them would have a chance of winning. The two are together for a good part of the film and share similar screen time. It was decided that Travolta fit better into the category of lead actor, as he has story sections that don't involve Jackson. As an interesting side note, however, Jackson did win for Best Lead Actor at the Film Independent Spirit Awards. Regardless, not having a clear idea of who was the lead in the film certainly didn't help Jackson nor Travolta's chances. Travolta also lost in the lead category. Another big contributor is who Samuel L. Jackson lost to. Martin Landau was a lifelong character actor and very respected within Hollywood, who had turned in an amazing performance as Bela Lugosi in the film Ed Wood. Landau is considered a great actor who had been nominated many times but never won an Oscar, and he had a lot of momentum to get that win. A good part of that momentum came from the production company Miramax, who had produced both Ed Wood and Pulp Fiction, and put their resources behind the established name in Landau in campaigning for the award, rather than the newcomer in Jackson. This also happened to Jackson's co-star Uma Thurman, who lost to the established Diane Wiest for a performance in Bullets Over Broadway, which was also produced by Miramax. In fact, despite being nominated in almost every major category, Pulp Fiction got smoked at the Oscars. It had 7 nominations for Best Picture, Director, Actress, Actor, Supporting Actor, Screenplay, and Editing, and the only award it walked away with was for Screenplay. This trend continues throughout most of Tarantino's movies. A lot of nominations, not a ton of wins. Tarantino's 10 feature films have racked up 34 Oscar nominations, but only 7 wins. Pulp Fiction's aforementioned screenplay win, Christoph Waltz going 2 for 2, original score for Hateful Eight, and most recently Brad Pitt and production design for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now that's a good deal of wins, but quite a few losses, especially when you think about how many of those came for some movies. Pulp Fiction lost in 6 categories, Inglourious Basterds lost 7, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood lost 8 categories. Okay, great. So Tarantino loses a lot. Where does Samuel L. Jackson fit back into this? Well, he only has the one loss, but he has roles in almost all of these Tarantino movies, so why didn't he end up with any more nominations? He only has tiny roles in Kill Bill and Inglourious Basterds. He gave a great performance in Django Unchained, but Christoph Waltz was too busy winning that award for Jackson or Leonardo DiCaprio to have a chance at that one, really. And he's not in Reservoir Dogs, Death Proof, or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So that leaves Jackie Brown and The Hateful Eight, the only 2 Tarantino films where Samuel L. Jackson is concretely in the lead actor role. So why wasn't he nominated? Honestly, there's not a lot of concrete evidence as to why. It's probably a combination of things mentioned before, production companies not putting the resources behind him, being up against people who probably had more momentum going for him, but it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, he really could have been at least nominated for both of those movies. I'm not saying this is a reason, but it is worth noting that at both of these events, 18 years apart for Jackie Brown and The Hateful Eight, no people of color were nominated for Best Actor, Actress, Supporting Actor, or Supporting Actress, with the 2016 ceremony in particular being heavily criticized for the lack of diversity among the nominees. It's also worth noting that Samuel L. Jackson was nominated and won quite a bit of other awards for both of these roles, including a Golden Globe nomination for Jackie Brown in the lead role. So that's it, right? Those were his best chances with some of the most respected directors that he collaborates the most with. If not with them, then when? Well, Jackson had a lot of memorable roles outside of his work with these 2, some of which I truly believe he could have been considered for. Coach Carter for one, or maybe Unbreakable if the Academy actually cared about superhero movies. Jackson did have one more performance that gained him significant buzz and accolades, and probably the only other performance to date that had a real chance of getting a nomination for an Academy Award. And that was the role of Carl Lee in the 1996 courtroom drama A Time to Kill. Based on the John Grisham book of the same name, Jackson played a father whose young daughter is raped by 2 white men in Mississippi. Angered by the fact that the men could easily get off with little to no jail time, Carl Lee takes matters into his own hands and kills them. In a star-studded cast that featured the film debut of Octavia Spencer, just as a fun fact, Jackson's performance steals the show with memorable and heart-wrenching moments, as well as some classic Samuel L. Jackson one-liners that are as good as any in the rest of his career.
Carly, don't answer that question. Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they burn in hell.
Jackson received many award nominations and some wins for smaller award shows, including a nomination for a Golden Globe. However, not even a nomination from the Oscars. This film had no clear reason why as to Jackson wasn't considered. While Jackson and co-star Matthew McConaughey's performance were universally praised, the film did have some criticism for glorifying vigilante justice. Plus, the movie came out in July rather than the typical November-December release date that Oscar-hopeful movies usually go for in terms of trying to keep their film fresh in the mind of the public when award season comes rolling around. And unfortunately, that's really it in terms of roles that had any sort of real traction that could have netted Samuel L. Jackson an Oscar. 5 real chances, 3 that got at least a Golden Globe nomination, and 1 Oscar nomination. Though it's definitely not too late, as the man does not appear to be slowing down in the slightest in terms of how many projects he says yes to. Honestly though, it comes down a lot to the fact that he doesn't have an Oscar and it doesn't seem to bother him that much. I feel like if he had went the route as someone like DiCaprio and only took roles that were almost guaranteed to get him in the conversation at least, he would have won years ago. But instead, he's taken tons of roles that vary in quality, genre, and box office success. And with the money he earns and the fun he clearly has doing it, who can blame him? Though, you know, it maybe would be nice to see him team up with Tarantino or Spike one last time for one more at least real shot at it. Also, if anyone knows where to find recordings of those promotions he did for Snakes on the Plane, I would be very interested.
You starting to see pictures, ain't you?
Purple Hippo Cinema. Purple Hippo Cinema.